Beloved child. Someone has finally spoken the truth after carrying it in silence for a very long time. The words you are about to hear were never meant to stay hidden forever. They remained buried beneath fear, guilt, and countless unanswered questions. But today, the silence has been broken. The confession has begun, and once you hear it, nothing about this story will ever feel the same again. Listen carefully. There was a time when two hearts were moving toward the same future with complete faith. Every dream seemed to fit perfectly into place, and every promise felt strong enough to survive any storm. Yet while those dreams were quietly growing, someone else was watching from the shadows. They smiled in public, offered kind words, and pretended to celebrate your happiness. But behind every smile was another plan, one that no one could see. Don't skip. As the wedding day came closer, strange events slowly started appearing. Important messages disappeared without explanation. Phone calls were suddenly interrupted. Honest conversations turned into painful misunderstandings. Family members began hearing stories that were never true. One person insisted that you had changed. Another claimed you no longer cared. Tiny lies were repeated so many times that they slowly began to sound like the truth. You wondered why everything had become so confusing. You questioned your own heart. Your person also felt something was wrong, but every time they tried to find answers, another obstacle appeared. It was as if an invisible hand was quietly moving every piece on the board, making sure the distance between you grew a little wider every single day. The wedding preparations continued, but joy was slowly being replaced by uncertainty. Even those closest to your person noticed that something felt different. Their smile wasn't the same anymore. Their excitement faded into quiet moments of deep thought. Every night they found themselves staring at old memories, wondering why their heart refused to let go of someone they believed they had already lost. Don't skip. Then, only a few days before the ceremony, an unexpected stranger arrived in town. No one knew why this person had returned after staying away for so many years. They carried an old envelope that had never been opened and a secret they had promised to protect until the right moment. For years they remained silent because they believed exposing the truth would only create more pain. But now they realized that silence had become even more dangerous than honesty. Meanwhile, another person inside the family grew increasingly nervous. They watched every conversation carefully. They became uncomfortable whenever your name was mentioned. Every unexpected phone call filled them with fear. Every knock at the door made their heart race. They knew that if even one hidden detail came into the light, everything they had carefully planned would collapse within minutes. On the evening before the wedding rehearsal, everyone gathered together for what was supposed to be a peaceful family dinner. Laughter filled the room, music played softly in the background, and guests spoke excitedly about the celebration waiting for the next morning. Yet one chair remained strangely empty. It belonged to someone who had been invited at the last moment, a person nobody expected to see again. Hours passed before that person finally entered the room. The conversation immediately stopped. No one smiled. No one moved. The silence became heavier than anyone could explain. Without saying a single word, the visitor slowly placed a small sealed notebook on the center of the table. The cover looked old, worn, and damaged by time. Everyone stared at it, confused. Your person looked around the room, trying to understand why several family members suddenly looked terrified. One elderly relative quietly whispered, "Please, don't open that here." But another voice answered, "It has stayed closed for far too long." The notebook was gently opened. Inside were handwritten pages describing conversations, dates, names, and shocking details that no outsider should have known. Every page pointed toward one unbelievable conclusion: someone had deliberately tried to replace you before the wedding ever had the chance to happen. Gasps echoed across the room. Some people immediately denied everything. Others lowered their heads because they already knew. But the biggest surprise had not yet arrived. At the very back of the notebook was one final page with only a single sentence written across it. "I can no longer live with this guilt. Tomorrow, I will confess everything in front of everyone." At that exact moment, someone standing quietly near the doorway began to cry. And for the first time in years, they finally said, "It was me." The room became completely silent. No one knew what to say after those 3 words echoed through the house. "It was me." Every pair of eyes turned toward the trembling figure standing near the doorway. Their hands were shaking so badly they could barely hold themselves upright. Tears rolled down their face as years of guilt finally became too heavy to carry. Your person slowly stood from the chair, unable to believe what they had just heard. "What do you mean? It was you?" The confession did not come immediately. Instead, the person closed their eyes and took a long, painful breath. "I never wanted to destroy your future. But I allowed someone else to convince me that replacing them was the only way to protect this family." The word struck everyone like lightning. Several relatives immediately looked toward one another. Some already suspected the truth. Others looked completely shocked. "Don't skip." The confessor continued. "Months before the wedding, someone came to me with lies. They told me that your relationship would never survive. They said another person came from a wealthier family. A more respected family. Someone who could offer a better future." Your person's face slowly changed. Every strange memory from the past suddenly began fitting together. The cancelled meetings. The unanswered messages. The sudden silence. The cold behavior that never made sense. None of it had happened by accident. "I believed those lies," the confessor whispered. "And once I believed them, I became part of the plan." The room filled with stunned silence. One family member quietly asked, "What plan?" The answer came slowly. "The plan to make sure they disappeared from your life before the wedding." A wave of disbelief swept through the room. The confessor admitted they had secretly hidden letters that were meant to reach your person. Important messages were deleted before they could ever be read. Family conversations were twisted into something completely different. Even trusted friends had unknowingly repeated false stories that had been carefully planted weeks earlier. Everything had been designed for one purpose: to make both of you believe the other had chosen to walk away. Don't skip. Your person slowly sat back down. Their eyes filled with tears. I waited every single day. I thought they had stopped loving me. The confessor covered their face. They never stopped. They searched for you. They cried for you. They asked about you more times than you will ever know. But every answer they received was another lie. Several people around the table began crying quietly. An elderly family member finally spoke. I always knew something felt wrong. But I never imagined someone inside this family could help destroy two innocent hearts. The confessor nodded. I deserve every bit of your anger. But there is still something none of you know. Everyone looked up. There wasn't just one person behind this. The room froze again. What do you mean? I was only following instructions. Those words changed everything. Suddenly the confession was no longer about one guilty person. There was someone else. Someone who had remained completely hidden. Someone whose name had never appeared in any conversation. Someone who had carefully stayed in the shadows while everyone else took the blame. The confessor slowly reached into their pocket and removed an old folded photograph. It had faded with time. The edges were torn. On the back was a handwritten sentence. If this plan succeeds, no one will ever discover who truly started it. Your person carefully unfolded the photograph. The moment they saw the face, their breathing stopped. Because the person smiling in that picture was someone they trusted more than anyone else. And suddenly they realized. The biggest betrayal had never come from an enemy. It had come from someone they had called family. Your person could not take their eyes off the photograph. Their hands trembled so violently that the picture almost slipped onto the floor. No. They whispered the word over and over, hoping they had seen the wrong face. It can't be them. The entire room leaned forward, desperate to know what had been hidden for so many years. One relative finally broke the silence. Who is it? Your person slowly turned the photograph around. A wave of disbelief swept across the room. Several people immediately stood from their chairs. Others covered their mouths in complete shock. The face in the photograph belonged to someone who had always acted like the family's greatest supporter. Someone who had attended every celebration. Someone who had comforted everyone during difficult times. Someone nobody had ever suspected. Don't skip. The confessor lowered their head. They knew exactly what they were doing. They told me your love would destroy the family. They said the wedding had to happen with someone else before it was too late. They promised that once everything was over, no one would ever know the truth. Every sentence made the atmosphere heavier. One elderly family member suddenly remembered something. Wait. The week before the engagement, they were the one who insisted on changing the guest list. Another relative spoke. And they were also the one who collected everyone's phone numbers. A third person added quietly. They even volunteered to deliver the wedding invitations. Slowly, every forgotten memory began connecting together. Nothing had been random. Every decision had been carefully planned. Every coincidence had actually been another step in the same hidden scheme. Your person felt their heart sink. So every time I tried to reach them, the confessor nodded. The messages never arrived. And every time they tried to reach you, they were told you didn't want to speak anymore. Tears filled your person's eyes. For all these years, we were fighting lies. Don't skip. The confessor reached into the old notebook once again. There is one final piece of evidence. Everyone watched as another folded envelope appeared. Unlike the others, this envelope had never been opened. Across the front were only 6 handwritten words, "Open only if the truth survives." No one moved. Your person slowly broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. The handwriting looked instantly familiar. It belonged to the very person whose face appeared in the photograph. The room became silent as your person began reading aloud. If you are reading this, then my plan has already failed. I believed replacing them would solve everything. I convinced myself I was protecting this family, but every lie created another wound. I watched 2 innocent hearts suffer because of choices I made. Every smile I pretended to have became heavier with guilt. Several relatives began crying before the letter was even finished. The confession continued. I thought time would bury the truth forever. Instead, it buried my own peace. If this letter is ever found, don't blame the people who helped me. They believed my lies just as much as everyone else. The responsibility begins with me. The room fell completely silent. But then, your person noticed something unusual. There was another folded page hidden beneath the letter. It was newer. The paper was clean. The handwriting was completely different. At the bottom was today's date. Someone had added a new message only hours before. Your person unfolded it slowly. The first line sent a chill through everyone in the room. I've just learned the original mastermind wasn't acting alone. And below that sentence, there was one final name. A name no one in the family had ever expected to see. The room stood frozen. No one dared to breathe as your person stared at the final name written on the page. For a long moment, they said nothing. Their eyes moved across the letters again and again, as if hoping they would somehow change. This isn't possible. A deep silence settled over the family. One relative finally stepped forward. "Whose name is it?" Your person slowly looked up. "It belongs to the one person who knew every detail about our relationship from the very beginning." Gasps echoed through the room. That person had celebrated every milestone with them. They had offered advice during difficult moments. They had comforted both families whenever arguments broke out. No one had ever imagined they could have been connected to the secret. "Don't skip." "I spent so long wondering why everything fell apart," they said quietly. "Now I finally understand that love didn't fail. Honesty did." The family apologized for believing rumors instead of seeking the truth. The confessor asked for forgiveness without expecting it. Some wounds could not disappear overnight. Some trust would take time to rebuild. But everyone agreed on one thing. No more secrets. No more hidden plans. No more replacing one person with another through lies and manipulation. As the old notebook was gently closed for the final time, your person smiled, not because the past had been erased, but because the truth had finally been given a voice. And from that day forward, every important decision in the family would begin with honesty instead of fear. Because they had learned one unforgettable lesson. A wedding can be delayed by deception. A relationship can be wounded by lies. But the truth, no matter how long it is buried, always finds its way back into the light.